Transmission begins.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is the Josh Tolley Show on the GCN Radio Network.
My next guest has been somebody who people have suggested for a very long time I get on this show. He deals with stuff the rest of us either don't want to deal with, don't believe in dealing with, or just too afraid to even talk about it. His name is L.A. Marzulli. Now, his website is the same name. You can go to lamarzulli.net. And not only are we going to have a wonderful conversation here in a moment, but he's also one of the speakers at the Hear the Watchman conference that I've been telling you about for the last few weeks. If you want to go to this conference, go to hearthewatchman.com. You can sign up right there. If you enter the code JOSH, they give you $50 off the entry fee. If you can't make it, though, fear not. You can actually stream the event live, and that's really affordable, and your whole family can sit there and watch it. That's cool, too. You can do that at that same website. And we'll get into why that conference is so important in a minute. But first, L.A. Marzulli, welcome to the show. How are you doing, sir?
I'm doing good, Josh. Thanks for having me on. Appreciate it.
Oh, thank you so much for being here. Now, you cover a field of study that is way outside of the typical politics, current events sort of domain. And one of the things that really, really fascinates me about what you do is how you bridge the odd with faith, whereas a lot of the stuff in the media bridges the odd with just the odd. What kind of got you going down this path in the first place? Most people don't spend their day thinking about giants, alien abductions, weird skulls, and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, we have a joke around here. It's we sort of are the real X-Files. We don't go home, at the end of the day, and we don't have script writers. The stuff that comes across my email it's like literally right out of the X-Files, except it's all real stuff. What changed my life was a book that came across my desk years ago. Actually, I went to a bookstore and purchased it because a friend of mine said, well, what about UFOs and extraterrestrials? Now, this is back in the 80s, like maybe 87, 88, something like that. And I've been, at that time, I had been a Christian for about 8, 9 years. And I went to the Christian bookstore and I said, do you got anything on UFOs or, aliens? And the guy kind of gave me the weird look, but took me down this one aisle, and there was a book there which changed my life. In fact, we carry it in our bookstore. It's called The Omega Conspiracy by Dr. I.D.E. Thomas. And that book, it really, in some ways, has served as a primer to all of us who are in this field. I speak of Tom Horn, Chris Putman, Dr. Michael Heiser, I know, tapped into that, and many others, Doug Hamp, just to name a few. All of us sort of cut our teeth on the Omega Conspiracy. I received an honorary doctorate from Dr. I.D.E. Thomas and Pacific International. And, I realize, Pacific International isn't Harvard University. I get it. But, the day I was there were 30 people receiving diplomas at least. And it was a red letter day for me to actually have an honorary doctorate from my mentor. After reading the book, of course, I contacted Dr. Thomas, and I found out he was about 45 minutes from where I lived. And that began the relationship, which would last literally until his death in 2013. He died of Alzheimer's. A great man, a fearless man of God. He does a soliloquy on YouTube, and you can Google that. Just Google, go to YouTube and then hit Dr. I.D.E. Thomas and watch what comes up. It's at the end of a UFO program that was probably shot, I'm going to guess, in the 90s. So he's still in his prime at this point. I mean, even though he's like getting up in his late 70s, early 80s, he's still mentally in his prime. And he delivers this 5-minute soliloquy without a comma, without just amazing, and outlines the entire UFO connection to the fallen angels. It's brilliant. It's absolutely brilliant. And every now and then, if I want to get inspired, I just go on YouTube and watch it. So that book, The Omega Conspiracy, really served as a primer for me. What's interesting here, Josh, you say your introduction, stuff that we don't even talk about. And frankly, that's part of the problem. We have a new TV show called Politics, Prophecy, and the Supernatural Report. And right now it's just on YouTube. We're about to go to Roku with it. And we're also being aired on VTN, Victory Television Network in Little Rock, Arkansas. That'll be our first television station that we're actually hooking up with. We will slowly branch out from there with a weekly half-hour program. The first program is on the Shroud of Turin, and I get that. The second program, we go right into it, UFOs. And I start the program basically by stating, look, we sit in our churches every Sunday and we hear about virgin births, talking donkeys, floating axe head, 2 gold coins that appear out of the mouths of fish, men that walk on water, water that's changed to wine. And I'm not reading that. Those are my core beliefs. That's what we believe. And I believe in all those things that I just said happen literally. But do we take for a moment, do we think for a moment that everything I just mentioned is the supernatural on steroids? Absolutely on steroids. And then we hear about the fallen cherub, Satan. Mm-hmm. Paul admonishes us, will come with all signs and lying wonders. Yeshua, Jesus tells us that men will faint from fear for what is coming upon the earth, that even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. And because Israel is back in the homeland, in my opinion, this sets the prophetic clock ticking. That was the fulfillment of prophecy, even on the birth pains of the Holocaust. From the ashes of the Holocaust, which, by the way, the German word Holocaustin means a burnt offering on an altar. That's what it means, and that's exactly what the Holocaust was. They stacked the bodies like cornwood and burned them. This is an offering to their would-be god, Satan, the god of this world. And I wrote about this extensively in my book, The Cosmic Chess Match, where we see that the reason for this is that Hasatan, Satan, knows that if he can keep the Jews from going to Israel, wipe out every Jew, prophecy will not be fulfilled. God's a liar, follow me. And as bizarre as that sounds, that's, again, my core belief. We are in the midst of a cosmic war. And that cosmic war is ramping up in ways that I've never seen. But the fact that Israel was regathered back into its ancient homeland, which fulfills the prophecies of Amos 9 in particular, gives us a heads up that we are in a period of time unlike any other. And it's interesting that the entire UFO phenomenon is burgeoning. There's a statement, my business partner and I, Richard Shaw, often joke about this, real burgeoning and not going away, a phrase that I coined years ago. But it's true. The UFO phenomenon is real. It is burgeoning and not going away. Real because when you have someone like Paul Hellyer, the former Secretary of Defense of the Canadian government, state on the record that UFOs are as real as the airplanes flying overhead. What are we to do with that kind of a statement? And so when we look at all this, we realize that it's burgeoning because the phenomenon is burgeoning. It's increasing in number because we can track this stuff. And guys like...
Well, L.A., hold on 1 second, sir. Hold on 1 second. We're up against a break. And we're just kicking off, folks. Stay where you're at. We'll be back right after this. All right, we're talking to L.A. Marzulli. Once again, the website, lamarzulli.net. You can just Google him, too. Google will fix the spelling, point you in the right direction. Now, before the break, sir, we were talking about how you kind of got involved in this and how it's kind of frowned upon in Christianity. What do you say to those people who say, hey, you know what? How can you be a Christian and look into UFOs and look into abductions and look into Planet X and all that sort of stuff?
Well, look, it's already here. I mean, the phenomenon is here. Right before the break, we talked about a little phrase I coined, UFOs are real burgeoning and not going away. I mean, UFO reporting sites, agencies, there's such an increase in number that some researchers are becoming alarmed. In 1950, the month I was born in December, there was one UFO sighting reported. Fast forward to last year, and it's well over 1,000. So the phenomenon it is increasing, and it's not going away. And we need to start talking about it. There was a clip on Bill O'Reilly's show, Waters World. I'm sure most of your fans and people that listen to your show know what that's about. But, Jesse Waters goes out, and he does these kind of like mic in hand, guerrilla-type interviews, and they're great. They're pithy and funny and sort of tongue-in-cheek, and I get all that. But the problem being, and I wrote in right after the program, I wrote into O'Reilly and just said, look, the problem here is that you're not treating the subject, which is a very serious subject. You're not treating it the way it should be treated, and it's all tongue in cheek. And this is called soft disclosure. This is what the news media does. When the CIA released, remember when the X-Files reruns came out a couple of weeks ago, or I should say not reruns, but the new show.
Yes.
After like 20 years or whatever. So the new show comes out, and on a Monday it was released. That was the first episode. Well, on that Monday, the CIA decides to release what was up till then classified documents showing UFO pictures. And there's some great shots in there from the 50s and 60s. And what's her face? Gretchen Carlson on Fox News ran the story. Now, remember, she's like not doing any reporting. She's reading off a teleprompter.
Right.
Someone else is taking the story, and she's just reading and she's told how to treat the story. And so she's yucking it up with, her fellow coworker at Fox. And they're talking about the CIA and the little green men and all this other nonsense. And the problem here is, just like O'Reilly, the subject is treated, you're either a wacko or a tinfoil hat or a conspiracy theorist. I love that one. But no one's really, in our culture, in America, is really talking about it. And this, now I'm going to put on my tinfoil hat. There's a reason for this. In our country, Orson Welles did a show years ago, decades ago, and that freaked everybody out. It was the War of the Worlds. It was a fictional account. People jumped out of windows. People committed suicide. There was mass panic. The government saw that and realized that, oh my gosh, if something really happens, there's going to be mass hysteria. And so everything, for instance, Chuck Missler talks about Roswell is more classified. The events of Roswell, New Mexico, 1947, where allegedly not one, at least two craft at different sites crashed in the Roswell area, one in Aurora. But I digress. Let's just stick with the Roswell one. And they've reworked that countless times. And the latest one, Roswell case closed, trying to tell us that, once again, these were weather balloons and that the bodies recovered were actually crash test dummies. But the problem with that is the crash test dummies weren't used by the Air Force until 5 years later. So that's not going to work. And they just keep throwing this nonsense up. Roswell has a higher classified rating than the nuclear bomb. In other words, you can go and you can figure out how to build a nuclear bomb, but you can't look at Roswell. The presidents from Eisenhower up have never been debriefed. It's on a need-to-know basis, and they don't need to know. So even the president, congressmen have tried to pry open the can of worms. And all this is being kept, in my opinion, and again, I got my tinfoil hat here. I'm wearing it very proudly, but there is a shadow government. Look, Newt Gingrich, there was a clip I did on PPS Report. We posted it up on our television site on YouTube and also the website ppsreport.com yesterday. Newt Gingrich is sitting down with Bill O'Reilly, and he's talking about Donald Trump. And O'Reilly throws him a question and says, hey, why all the animus directed to the Donald? Why is this dumb Trump movement even getting legs? And Gingrich he probably talked too much. I mean, this clip has gotten legs where he basically just states, well, Donald's not part of the secret societies. He hasn't been initiated. There you go. This is a Washington insider, and he's spilling the beans. There is a shadow government. That's why they meet every year in Bohemian Grove. And I believe, as Russ Dizdar does, as Alex Jones does, that there is a ritualistic sacrifice. It is not a reenactment. It's the real deal. Someone is sacrificed under that huge owl, which is actually Moloch. But I digress. So, look, as Christians, and here's how I was able to get Zondervan to publish my first novel, Nephilim, which talked about the whole UFO thing, and this was based off of Dr. I.D.E. Thomas's work. When they immediately rejected it, because I was an unpublished author, I had 3 chapters and a working outline. So you don't get signed for that. You got to finish the book. Right. So they rejected it. So I got on the phone with, at the time, the head acquisitions editor, Dave Lambert, who became a good friend and also a mentor as far as writing. I mean, he really held my feet to the fire. And I said, look, where's the Christian response? Now, remember, at this time, Ancient Aliens wasn't on the History Channel, okay? But we had The X-Files, and we had Independence Day and other movies. And I said, where's the Christian response to this? And that got them thinking, and they signed me on, and the rest is history. In 2016, we have, 7 or 8 years now of Ancient Aliens every Friday night, which is promulgating the idea, the theory, that we were visited in the far distant past by extraterrestrials, who in fact jump-started the evolution of man. They genetically manipulated us. They started the world's religions, our societies, our cultures, and now at this critical junction, they're about to come back again. Now, that's what they say on an ongoing basis. Then we have the X-Files. Then we have every movie that's out there, and the movies are just endless about extraterrestrials. And think of Prometheus, all promulgating again the idea of panspermia. Then we have the Darwinists, and I show this clip at my lectures when Richard Dawkins sits down with Ben Stein. And if you haven't seen that movie, folks, Expelled, you need to go watch it, because Stein throws a softball question over to Dawkins and says, hey, look, where did life begin? Where did the first self-replicating molecule come from? Well, Dawkins has no idea, but he says, well, it could have happened this way. Let me cough for a second. It could have happened this way. And he goes, maybe a long time ago, millions of years ago, in another part of the galaxy, sounds like Star Wars to me, a race of extraterrestrials who attained some sort of very high civilization by some sort of Darwinian process would have then created us in a lab and seeded us throughout the universe. We fell to Earth, and boom, nature took its course, and over millions of years, we evolved. Nonsense. That's all he's got. Whereas as a Christian, we know that all things were created by Yeshua, Jesus, and without him, nothing that was made was made. So we have a real dichotomy between the two thoughts here. Dawkins has no idea how any of this began, nor does any of us, really. So we can believe Dawkins' mythos of how this began, which is just making it up as he goes along, or we can go back to the biblical prophetic narrative and realize that the truth is there, that Yeshua, Jesus, did speak the entire universe into existence, and we are made fearfully and wonderfully in the image and likeness of God. But this is the deal. We are surrounded by it. The Christian church is surrounded by it. When I go and I speak at churches and conferences...
Hold on one second, L.A. Hold on 1 second. We're up against the break. Yeah, exactly. We'll be back right after this. Absolutely fascinating topic with L.A. Marzulli, lamarzulli.net. There's so much on there, folks. There's videos, there's books, and there's also this conference coming up, Hear the Watchman, hearthewatchman.com. 18th, 19th, and 20th of this month. If you can't make it live, then go ahead and live stream it. LA is going to be talking. I'm going to be talking. Matter of fact, I just found out that I'm going to be talking twice. But you can stream it, enter discount code Josh, and they'll hook you up. All right, so before the break, I mean, we're talking about these UFO things. LA, I got to tell you that most of our audience comes for the political and business sort of normal conversation, but what you're bringing up is so fascinating. And what's interesting is nobody wants to admit they believe this stuff until somebody else says it. And then once you open that can, oh my goodness, we're getting messages left and right about this stuff. So just continue where you're going.
Well, I think what's interesting for me right before the break, when I'm at conferences and I will ask people, I'll go, hey, how many of you here have had an encounter? And what's amazing, I would say as a low about 15%, as a high 30 to 35% of the people in the audience will raise their hand. I was at a church, very large church in the South, and there was about 1,000 people in the audience, roughly, 900 to 1,000 people. And I asked for a show of hands. I remember the pastor's son is sitting in the second row, and he came up afterwards and told me this, and he was like really taken aback by it. So he figured, I'm asking for a show of hands. How many of you has actually had an encounter, seen a UFO, any of this kind of stuff? And he's figuring, there's going to be like 2 or 3 people raise their hands. So he turns behind them, and between 25 and 30% of the people had their hands up. He was completely blown away by that. And he actually saw someone he knew, and he went up to them, why haven't you told us this? Why didn't you say anything about it. And see, what people don't get is people are afraid of the ridicule. And if you go to any church and you ask them, how many of you had an encounter, you're going to get between 15 and 30% in any church. I don't care where you go. Because, I travel all over the States, and these are the numbers. These are the hard numbers. Now, we're not counting them and plotting it on a graph. I'm not doing that. But it's, so it's
Right.
really a soft scientific study, if you want to say that. But it's between 15 and 35% of the audience, depending on where we go, who raise their hand. And, the skeptical will say, well, it's because you're stacking the audience with people who are interested in UFOs. No. A lot of the time, it's just people in the church. They'll fly me in just for that particular group, that particular church. The pastor wants to arm his congregation with what is coming. Look, we are told that even the elect would be deceived if that were possible. Jesus tells us this, right?
Right.
And if we are in the end times, and I believe we are, my newest book, Days of Chaos, sort of looks at the Matthew 24 narrative where Yeshua, Jesus, gives us a bullet points of what to look for. The wars and rumors of wars. Many will come in my name saying, I am the Christ. The wars and rumors of wars, famines, earthquakes, pestilence, all this stuff. And everything that we see is happening. I often asked the audience recently in 2016, how many of you think that the world has gotten better, safer in the last 15 years? No one raises their hand. No one. So, look, it's like people look at the blood moons and they go, oh, my gosh, nothing happened with the blood moons. And I go, excuse me, what did you expect to happen? The planet to split in half? Everything happened with the blood moons. The fact that the Russians are now in the Middle East, and I'm digressing into more of a political thing. And by the way, that's why the show is called Politics, Prophecy, and a Supernatural Report. Yeah, we talk about UFOs and Bigfoot and black-eyed kids and all this other stuff, but we also have my eye is always on the Middle East and the political machinations going on there, always. And I blog about it, talk about it, write about it. In fact, in Dallas in a couple of weeks, Days of Chaos, I'll be talking about the wars and rumors of wars and what is going on in the Middle East, the rise of ISIS, the fact that the Russians are in the Middle East is absolutely unprecedented. Unprecedented. 4 blood moons, people can scoff at that, people can laugh about it. All of a sudden, at the tail end of 2015, who shows up? And they show up in force, the Russians, planes, tanks, automobiles, the whole thing. It's all there. And now we see the saber rattling with the Saudis that are with this, Northern Thunder, the greatest, largest military exercise in Middle Eastern history. And many of us believe that we're looking at World War III happening right in front of our eyes. But the media, our media over here is absolutely silent on it. We don't hear doodly squat about it. I've showed drone footage of a Russian drone going over the city of Damascus, and the suburbs around Damascus literally have become a ruinous heap. There's nothing left of the city. Now, Damascus itself is still functioning. I get that. But, we don't see this stuff. I show clips of Safwat Hijazi, who was a very fiery imam, and of course, this is when the Muslim Brotherhood and the Arab Spring was at its full height, and Hosni Mubarak was deposed, and Morsi was running, and Morsi was elected, and that lasted about a year, and the government said, well, we're not going with this. The military stepped up, and they deposed him. Okay, I get that. Now we've got Sisi, who is more of a moderate in Egypt. But what's interesting, and I show this clip, and the audience just sits there with their jaw on the ground. And I asked him, why hasn't our media shown you this? And there's a reason for it. They don't want you to see what's really going on over there. It's absolutely deliberate. This is big news. And what it shows is Safwat Hijazi stating unequivocally that the capital of the newly formed Arab states will be Jerusalem, Al-Quds, Jerusalem. And he says it 2 or 3 times. And then they do the chant in Arabic, which is, to Jerusalem we go, martyrs in the millions. And I look out at the audience, and you get these expressions of shock, disbelief, angst, anger. It's all over the map. And people just go, well, why haven't they shown us this? They don't show you this because if they showed you this, you'd get ticked off. You'd begin to realize that the whole 2-state solution thing is a bunch of nonsense. But I digress.
Well, what's interesting about that is the wars and rumors of wars has confused me for a long time. So I started doing a deep study of what that means, looking up Arabic and Greek and all that sort of stuff. And the reality is that a rumor of war isn't a rumor like we think, we spread a rumor. It's actually confusion. So it's war and confusion of war. And when you think about it right now, we have a situation where if an Al-Qaeda terrorist is 50 feet to my left, we shoot him. If he's 50 feet to my right across that imaginary line, we actually pay and supply him. In Iraq, we're fighting with Iran, and then with Iran, we're fighting against them in Syria. So we have a situation where all these nations are fighting with and against each other at the same time, which is actually the definition of a confusion of war. So when you look at that, it just kind of sends a chill down your spine. It says, wait a second, we're at this place, and to a certain extent, LA, I think we're in World War III. I call it World War Now, because World War Now is never going to end.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And one of the, moving back into the whole UFO thing real quick, and this is, I agree with the late David Flynn, and I discussed this before he passed away. Flynn always believed that there would be a war in the Middle East, and some nutcase is going to use a nuke somewhere. And when that nuke goes off, now remember, the Russians just recently, as of last week, were bringing nuclear tipped missiles into the Mediterranean to dock them off the Syrian coast. So now that ups the ante. And we know the Israelis, of course, have nukes, and who knows, I believe, quite frankly, that the Iranians have had them for quite some time.
Oh, yeah.
But again, we could talk about this all day long. What's interesting is Flynn and I both agree in this, that the scenario we both outlined was this, that there was going to be some sort of a nuclear event, which would then, because of the way the world is hooked up, and the world is hooked up with the satellites and the communication systems. Look, when the Fukushima disaster happened and that tidal wave came in at the Fukushima prefecture in Japan several years ago, the world watched in real time. We watched that tidal wave come in real time. That wasn't delayed, 3-second delay or something, because of the satellites beaming it all over the world. If a nuclear disaster happens anywhere, a bomb goes off anywhere on this planet, we will watch this, and this will create the greatest climate of fear, collective fear, that the human race has ever known. This is when they show up. And when they show up, again, they will say, but wait a minute, we created all life on this planet. We genetically manipulated early man. We started the world's religions. We started the world's civilizations, and now at this critical juncture, we, ET, are back to usher mankind into a golden age, a time of peace, prosperity, and knowledge. And oh, by the way, take this little implant, which is actually a chip, which will, it's a DNA upgrade, which will extend your lifespan 300 to 500 years disease-free.
Yeah.
Look, and I know we're up against a hard break here, but when we get back, I want to talk about the coming great deception.
Sounds great. Sounds great. We'll be back with L.A. Marzulli right after this. Hey, Tom.
Don't know what's
Hey,
in your
Tom, over
drinking
there at
water?
GCN.
Better get a Pro Pure. With the Pro 1 G 2.0 all-in-one filter, remove over 2
Can I talk to him again?
contaminants, including fluoride and lead. Taste water the way nature meant it to be. Clean, crisp, and refreshing.
All right.
See the complete line of Pro Pure water filtration products. There's a Pro Pure system for you.
You are just an endless well of information.
Our current free shipping special.
I mean, this is all I do. I mean, it's like, and people make the mistake, unfortunately, of pegging me or putting me into one. Well, he's just a UFO guy. No, I'm all over the map with this. I mean, Cosmic Chess Match, Days of Chaos. Those books really get into. Yeah, look, the whole UFO, that's the supernatural side of it. But in the meantime, what's going on globally is just got me. My ears are perked up like I'm sure yours are. I mean, I know we're not on the air now, but when we look at the coming collapse, the financial collapse.
Yeah.
We look at Jade Helm over last year, and some of the information I have, inside information, and there's no way to really vet this, but this is in preparation because they know it's coming. They know it's coming. And then you add the saber rattling with Kim Jong-un this week. We're on nuclear alert. It's like, I'm not making this stuff up. It's coming down.
Well, and then you have Turkey, Erdogan kind of propping himself up to be the next sultan. You have this rebuilding of the Ottoman Empire, the newly formed Islamic army. And then even the Benghazi thing, the Benghazi situation where it's pretty much clear that Russia was responsible for the attack on the consulate. It wasn't, this outside force. So you have all these sort of situations that are kind of playing into each other, and so many people are wondering, we're heading towards a crescendo. What's at the peak?
Well, it's in my opinion, again, it's a one-world government, one-world religious system, and there's only one way to do that, and that's to bring in an outside agency, which, of course, and I want to talk about this in depth, people don't understand the Darwinian paradigm acts as the springboard for the coming Great Deception, because guys like Richard Dawkins is promulgating panspermia, and because he's an ardent Darwinist, that's where they go. And we know from 2 Thessalonians, God sends them strong delusion because they did not believe the truth. We are here. Darwinism is taught everywhere. It is the prevailing paradigm in both academia and the scientific community. I mean, this is it. It's not going to go away. They believe the lie. So the strong delusion, in my opinion, is coming.
Well, it is, and there's so many factors to this that most Americans don't have the ability to keep an eye on all the moving targets. I mean, just on the list of questions, there's, Two Suns, Planet X, Nephilim, Black-Eyed Children, Rising Elite, UFO abductions, Project Bluebeam. So normal people need people like you to kind of put this all together. Otherwise, there's way too many moving targets.
Well, I agree, and that's what we try to do, and that's why the conference, and I've got, I think, what is it, like 2 hours at Hear the Watchman speaking. I'm actually going into the schedule here. So I'm speaking on Saturday from 1:30 to 2:30, right after lunch. Oh, this is always great. You look out and somebody's nodding off and they're drooling in their seat.
Right.
But I mean, I've got like 2 hours, and I'm actually reworking a presentation specifically for this conference because I know I got 2 hours and I want to make as much of an impact as I can. So I'm embedding a lot of video from our Watchers series and also other videos like that little clip with Gretchen Carlson. People need to see that.
Yeah. People
need to understand where we are. The drone footage that goes over Damascus. People need to see that. They need to see Safwat Higazi yelling and screaming like Hitler, sort of. People compare Donald Trump to Hitler. Look at Safwat Higazi. The capital of the United Arab States will be Jerusalem. Al-Quds! And they all start screaming and yelling. I mean, there is no two-state solution. You're not going to make peace with these guys. They don't care. The ideology is they want a caliphate.
Well, and here's the interesting thing about that, too. I mean, there's a lot of people, especially in alternative media, who are constantly saying, well, remember, the U.S. started ISIS, that guy started in a U.S. prison, and that is absolutely true, and it's part of it. But once you start a fire, the fire takes on a life of its own. So even though there's a real cabal behind some of these things, the radicalization, the spreading of that belief at some point's like a forest fire, and even those who design it can't contain it.
And that's exactly where we are. That's exactly where we are. I mean, just all one needs to do is look at where are they getting all those white Toyota pickup trucks from?
Yeah, right?
It's like, hello? It's unbelievable. But I mean, ISIS is, they were supposed to oust Bashar al-Assad, and they didn't. And they went rogue, and the rest is history. And so everybody's vying for the caliphate. The Iranians want the Shia caliphate. The Saudis want the Saudis, Sunni caliphate. ISIS wants the ISIS caliphate. And on it goes. The Muslim Brotherhood wants their caliphate. So, will the real caliphate please stand up? Turkey wants their own. So it's wacky over there. And I just think, Bill, my friend Bill Salas and I talk about this stuff, from time to time. And both Billy and I agree that Islam's about to get kicked in the head big time. Because it's just going to happen. Psalm 83 war, where Israel's in a position where she has to cut the heads off the snakes. It's not just like, well, we're just going to go up and clean up Lebanon. She can't do that anymore. when this thing breaks out, and I got a hunch it's going to be this year in the spring. Kings go to war in the spring. Winter's almost over. Spring's right around the corner. And watch the Middle East, because it's a powder keg over there. And with the Russians, the Russians are no friend of Israel, despite what, Putin says. That's why they're backing Bashar al-Assad. Lots of saber rattling going on between the Assad forces in Israel, saying that if you use chemical weapons against us, we will nuke you.
Yeah.
And we know that Bashar al-Assad's got chemical weapons. So, the ante is up. All it takes is some nutcase with a happy trigger finger, and we're off to the races.
Or some government with a design to bring on chaos on purpose with a happy trigger finger.
Look, why would Merkel bring in, this is a great conversation, why would Merkel deliberately allow 1 million refugees into Germany? It's deliberate.
Yep.
It's totally deliberate. It's a classic Hegelian dialectic, create the problem, create the counter-problem. Now we'll have a little synthesis, which will be a one world order out of chaos order. And that's where they're going. You collapse the global financial system by, the whole, and again, BRICS nations, and this is why oil is so low, and you know all this. It's just fascinating to watch it actually play out.
Yeah, it is. And to live in this time and to see this happening and to watch the speed at which this is starting to escalate. I mean, 20 years ago, people were talking about this, but we were going about 30 miles an hour. Now we're talking about this, and we're doing about 120 down the highway. Hold on 1 second, 30
agree.
seconds.
I call it the same analogy. I call it a freight train on steroids, because that's what it is.
Yep.
And there is no brakeman.
Yep.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, stand by, hold on.
At little or no cost to you. Shipping is free and all paperwork is handled for you. Just call 866-389-0620. That's 866-389-0620. Again, 866-389-0620.
Transmission begins.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1.
This is the Josh Tolley Show on the GCN Radio Network.
All right, second hour, Josh Tolley Show, GCN Radio Network. If you want to be part of it today, 1-800-259-5791, 1-800-259-5791. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Google+, YouTube, of course, and obviously the website, joshtully.com, or you can grab a copy of Evangelpreneur, the #1 Christian business book in America, and the #1 entrepreneurship book in any category in the world right now, so go on and grab a copy of that. We are talking to L.A. Marzulli today. Now, the website, lamarzulli.net. If you're just joining us, we took a drastic tangent off of current political business sort of topics, and we're talking about the things that go bump in the night, as it were. Now, L.A., this is absolutely fascinating to me. The comments continue to just stream in. Pour in would be a better way to put it. And before the break, you said we need to talk about this coming great deception. So go ahead and kick it off, sir.
Well, here's the deal with the coming great deception. Again, I believe it's a phrase I coined in the first Nephilim book. The Nephilim became a trilogy, the Nephilim trilogy. But the coming great deception basically plays on the springboard of Darwinism. And what I mean by this, when we look at what is the prevailing paradigm in both the scientific community and academia, it is Darwinism. Everything works and moves off of the Darwinian theory. There is no supernatural, there is no God, there is no ultimate right or wrong. It's all moral relativism, no moral absolutes, moral relativism, situational ethics. So it's, as long as you're not hurting anybody, everything is okay, that whole deal. And that's where we are. We're in a post-Christian world. Okay, I get that. So how do we as Christians live in this post-Christian world? And we see that it's very difficult. If we're interested in biology at all, we have to adopt the Darwinian paradigm. Again, the Darwinian paradigm is everywhere. I mean, it's absolutely, we are surrounded by it. It is, when I go down to Peru and I walk into the museum in Lima, guess what I see? I see the same little silly chimp deciding to stand up one day, hunch over, and then we see the progression to modern man. Of course, that's just made up, completely made up, a totally bogus deal. No one knows any of this stuff, and we know that from a DNA, the oxyribonucleic double helix of life, the spiral of life, as I've come to call it, that everything creates or reproduces its own kind.
Right.
And this is a very complex coding system. Darwin didn't know anything about DNA. It was only discovered by Watson and Crick several decades ago. So, discovered, but it's always been there. Complex coding system. And this is why when Dawkins looks at this, he goes, well, this just didn't arrive by chance. Someone had to create this somewhere. And this is the whole idea of intelligent design. But Dawkins is okay with intelligent designers like someone from Zeta Reticuli, let's say, but not the God of the Bible. And of course, we as Christians believe that God of the Bible created everything ex nihilo. So we are in direct loggerheads with the Darwinian theory. However, the Darwinists are looking for our origins. The movie of several years ago, Prometheus, delved into this big time. It was kind of a movie, but the bottom line is, what was it promulgating? It was promulgating panspermia. What does ancient aliens, every Friday night, they talk about this, that we were visited by extraterrestrials, blah, 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 blah. Every single Friday night they talk about this. They are winning the war. They dominate the conversation. The Christians, for the most part, they don't even talk about it. For the most part, the church has got its head in the sand, won't even address this. Meanwhile, ancient aliens every Friday night. Look, you can call them kooks or everything else, but when you stand there at Sacsayhuaman in Peru, 12,000 feet above sea level, and I've been there, my hands have touched those rocks on that wall, and we look at 120-ton stones made of andesite, which are 7 on a Mohs hardness scale, diamond being a 10. And we see that the quarry is miles away, and there are no beasts of burden. And in the Neolithic, which is 3,500 years ago, there are no iron tools. They've got hardened copper. You cannot cut andesite stone with a copper chisel. You can't. Just show me. You can't do it. And not only that, how do you move 120-ton stone to the site? And not only that, how do you create polygonal shaped angles in the stone and then dress them so perfectly that you don't need mortar, and the stone next to it fits precisely with no space?
So
I've shown these pictures to architects and engineers, and everybody just scratches their heads.
So then, if it's not aliens, like the crazy-haired guy on Friday night says, and
Giorgio
if
Tsoukalos, right?
yeah, and if it's not, the indigenous people, then who did it?
I have come to call places like Sacsayhuaman, Ollantaytambo, another site in South America, Chichen Itza, the Great Circle Mountain in Ohio, Cahokia. I call it fallen angel technology, Nephilim architecture. And when we plug the fallen angels into all of this, everything begins to make sense. Let me just tie this into Scripture.
Sure.
We know from the biblical prophetic narrative, specifically stating in Genesis 3, that the seed of the serpent will be at war, at enmity with the seed of the woman. That's very graphic. It's in your face. We can tap dance around that and say, well, it really doesn't mean sperma, all this stuff. Fine, tap dance all you want. The bottom line is the seed of the woman manifests and becomes the Messiah roughly 2,000 years ago. Becomes Messiah. The seed of the woman becomes Messiah. The seed of the serpent, go over 3 chapters later, who's there? The Nephilim are on the earth. The Nephilim are on the earth. The sons of God see the daughters of men, and the sons of God, by the way, are always B'nai Ha-Elohim. We can tap dance around that all we want and say, well, it's the godly line of Seth, but that's not what the text says. The Hebrew is B'nai Ha-Elohim, which always points back to the angelic host of heaven. Read Job, the same verbiage is used in the book of Job. So there it is. And what we see is the sons of God marrying the daughters of men and creating this hybrid entity known as the Nephilim. And that's the reason for the flood. This is why it's imperative to understand what happens in Genesis 3, because if we don't, then in my opinion, the rest of the biblical prophetic narrative becomes obtuse, becomes obscure. We don't understand that there's a seed war, and the seed of a serpent will eventually culminate in the physical union of the fallen cherub with some woman on this planet, creating literally the Antichrist.
So, that leads into a number of different questions. After Noah, we still have giants. Are the giants the same as Nephilim, or the Nephilim creators of the giants? And if that's the case, are today's I don't know, aliens or grays or whatever, are they somehow related to the Nephilim and these giants?
This is a really complex question, and it moves us into an area which quite frankly to me is very unsettling, for one. For two, it took me, and I'm the guy who's researching this stuff, it took me 2 years to get my head around it. And I kept going up to the line and just go, I can't go there, and running back. And then I eased my way up to the line again, and I'm not dealing with this. And finally, I remember talking to, again, the late David Flynn. I said, Dave, I want to run something by you. And this is very troubling to me. So I ran my theory by him, and he kind of chuckled, and he said, yeah, I got there a while back, and it took me a while to deal with all this because your head begins to reel. Demons are the disembodied spirits of the Nephilim, and we have biblical texts which will certainly address that. But that's what they are, in my opinion. Now, other people disagree with that. That's fine. Fallen angels are fallen angels. They don't need anything to inhabit, to manifest in this dimension. They can just manifest. The proof text of that will be Satan is tempting Jesus, literally. And he takes him places. How does he do that? How does he move him from the desert onto a high place?
Great question. That's what's called a hook in broadcasting. Stay where you're at. We'll get to the answer on the other side. Don't go anywhere. All right, we're talking to L.A. Marzulli, and the topics are so broad, they're so deep, there's no possible way we are going to get all of the answers today. We're not even barely scratching the surface. So what you're going to want to do is go to L.A. Marzulli, it's LAMARZULLI.net. There's articles, books, videos, just all that sort of stuff right up on the website there, and of course, you know, just punch his name into YouTube. You can find his stuff there as well. Now, this interesting question, you know, like I said, L.A. Marzulli, we can go into a lot of these things. We're never going to dig all the answers out in what time we have left. But what I find interesting is at the same time, we are seeing this rise of weird stuff. I mean, the Catholic Church is saying that exorcisms are increasing, UFO sightings are just through the roof. The number of earthquakes are multiplied times higher than they were even 20 years ago. At the same time, we're seeing the odd. On the faithful side, on the Christian side, we're seeing a transformation too. I mean, there's this washing away of the lukewarm Christians who just kind of said, praise Jesus, and they're kind of just going away, right? The Sunday people. And what is left is this remnant that is just so determined to study the Word of God, to learn Hebrew, to do what He said to do. And it's amazing how there's almost this resurgence. I mean, it's not a massive revival, but it's almost like an elite core being built on the other side.
Well, there's always a remnant, always a remnant. And there are people, there are Christians who are doing exactly what you are saying. They're looking at the words of Yeshua, and trying to walk in a circumspect way. I mean, I think the days of the plastic Jesus smile and all that, look, I travel all over the country, and there's a lot of great pastors out there who are trying to arm their congregation to what is coming. And that's why they have me there, because they've studied the material, they've looked at stuff, they've done their homework, and now they want me to tell their congregation. So their congregation will not be deceived when all this stuff starts to come down, because it's going to come down. I mean, there's just no doubt. Look, when Yeshua tells us that even the elect would be deceived, what the heck is he talking about? You see, we claim to be Christians, and you're right. You know, this whole praise Jesus stuff, and I get all that. And, you know, it's like, and the hucksters on Christian TV, not all of them, but there's a lot of them on there.
Sure.
And all they want is your money. And, of course, I've been accused of the same thing. But it takes me a year to write a book, and it takes us 6 to 8 months to produce a video. And, you know, we're doing videos now on a daily basis out of our little TV studio that we set up here, thanks to the generous donations of a whole bunch of people who contributed to that, ppsreport.com. So, you know, we do these videos, but it takes time to do them. They just don't you know, manifest out of thin air. But the bottom line is this, that something is coming. And when we look at the words of Yeshua, who tells us even the elect would be deceived if that were possible, men faint from fear from what is coming upon the earth. And then he gives us perhaps what is the most sobering statement in all of the biblical prophetic narrative. Unless those days were shortened, no flesh would survive. Whoa, I don't want to hear that. You know, where's the happy, good, feel good, you know, you love your neighbor as yourself and everything's just going to be hunky-dory. Jesus loves, I mean, okay, I get that. He does love me. I understand that. I do have eternal life. I do have a spirit of a living God dwelling within me. You know, I get that. I understand that. And without love, I'm nothing. I'm just a clanging gong. I get that too. And that's what we struggle with and walk with as we drag the old man, our flesh, around with us until that glorious day when we're finally taken home or raptured. And I'm a strong proponent of the rapture. But look, in the meantime, this stuff is coming down. What do you do with 30% of your congregation who's had a sighting?
Right.
Or have had sleep paralysis or entities in the room? We need to start talking about it. I asked a question, Josh. I say, how many of you put on the armor of God? I'll get maybe 5% of the audience, 10% of the audience raised. And that tells you everything. 10%, 5% of the audience. Put on your armor of God. Go back to Ephesians 6 and understand that when Paul's talking about who are we fighting against? Not the flesh. We're fighting principalities. We're fighting archons, cosmocrators. These are wickedness in high places. These are the Greek names of these rankings of fallen angels. And they're here. And they're doing stuff. Constantly doing stuff. Because we know that if we're in the end times, the last days, that the fallen cherub has got his man waiting in the wings, the anti-Messiah, the Antichrist, who will become the one world leader. He's going to come up on the stage. It's got to happen. It's prophetic. I'm not making this stuff up. So at some point in time, and if we're in the window of that time, then we should start to see everything pointing to that. And guess what? In my opinion, everything points to the rise of the global one world government and a one world religious system, which begs the question, and here's what we talked about, the coming great deception. How do we get 1.8 billion Christians, 1.5 billion Muslims, a billion Hindus, and then everybody else to somehow come on board with this one world global religious system? And that's where it inexorably ties back into the Darwinian paradigm, which panspermia, when they show up, that changes everything. Mile-wide craft over the city, everything changes. And unless a person knows what they are looking at a priori, even the elect be deceived if that were possible?
Well, and not only that, I mean, once this event happens, you're also going to have a situation where the governments are going to be forced into making a decision, and those lines on the map are going to start to dissipate. And when it says there's a one-world government, it doesn't necessarily mean that everybody on the planet agrees with it. It means that those nations recognize that one unified religion as the one-world government and the one-world religion. So you run into a very sticky situation where you start asking yourself, well, what happens to the people who don't agree? And then you know, guillotines and death squads and all that sort of stuff.
Yeah, it's going to get nasty here. I mean, there's no doubt. I think that's what Jade Helm was about last year. It was a dry run for the coming collapse, which at some point has got to happen because out of chaos comes order. That's their motto, not ours.
Yeah, absolutely. And I kind of want to get to this question that continues to come up, and this is this idea of what's called black-eyed children. Since you've been on the show, I mean, I had tons of requests before you even got here, but since this show started only an hour and a half ago, I have gotten a number more. Josh, please ask them about black-eyed children. What are black-eyed children, and why is everybody freaking out about it?
Well, black-eyed kids, we actually covered this in our Watchers 5 of our Watchers series. There are now 9 installments in the series. We're working on 10, which I think will be, it's definitely cutting-edge research, what we have in 10, and that should be released probably in May sometime, late April, May, sometime in that window. And I'll shoot you an email, Josh, because you're going to want to talk about this stuff because it's hard-hitting. You know, we're in the field looking at all this, and it's real scientific evidence, and what we're going to present that. But here's something to think about. The black-eyed kids, the scenario goes something like this. You're home at night.
Wait. Perfect timing. The scenario goes like this. ... Stay where you're at. To me, one of the most hard-hitting parts of Scripture is when people came up to Yeshua and said, "Did we not cast out demons in your name? Did we not heal in your name?" And he said, "Depart from me." Oh, there will come a day when you say, "Lord, Lord." And he says, "Depart from me, you workers of iniquity, I never knew you." Look up iniquity. It also is translated as you workers of lawlessness. This, folks, are people who claim that he is God, who claim that he is Lord, who understood who he was and said, "Yep, you are him." And he still said, "I never knew you. Depart from me, you workers of lawlessness." That is just absolutely a sombering moment in Scripture. But we are talking to L.A. Marzulli, and the topic is everything that your mama didn't tell you, is what I'm calling today's show. and when we left off, we were talking about these black-eyed children and what they are and all that sort of stuff, and then we hit a break. So please, sir, pick up where you left off.
Okay, so here's the thing with the black-eyed kids. So let's say it's around dusk, and you're at home alone. Male or female doesn't make any difference, because we've had stories from males, men being home alone and women being home alone. Okay, so you're home alone, waiting for your spouse to come back, and it's right around sunset. You hear a knock on your door. So you go to your front door, open the door. There's two kids there. Their heads are down. They're wearing baseball caps. They're dressed funny, and for some reason, you're uneasy. In fact, you're really uneasy, but you're not sure why. And you go, "Hey, what do you kids want?" And one of the kids says, "Is it food time yet? Let us in. This won't take long." And you go, "Well, wait a minute. Come on, kids. Where are you guys from?" And at that point, they lift their heads up, and you see that their eyes, where the pupils should be, are completely black. There are no whites, nothing. Black-eyed, completely black-eyed. And at this point in time, and I've spoken to people that have actually had this encounter, fight or flight kicks in, and with everybody, it's flight. The door gets slammed, the bolt goes down, people run upstairs, and again, there's two people that I have talked to that I've had, actually three, that have had encounters with black-eyed kids or hybrid beings, and terrified to the nines, absolutely terrified. In fact, in Watchers 5, we interviewed this woman who had an encounter with one, and when I showed her a picture, an artist's conception of what one of these things looked like. Remember, we're live on camera filming all this. She begins to crawl off the chair. She moves to the edge of it. She's trying to get off as far away from the picture as she possibly can. And this is weeks after the event. And by the way, we actually led this person to the Lord later on that day, because we talked to her about this and what needed to be done. So that was sort of interesting. But the phenomenon with the black-eyed kids is real. What we believe they are, and I've talked to David Weberly, who's the author of Black-Eyed Children, a great book. Read it during the daytime, not at night. Pray before you read it. Pray after you read it. And pray to see if the Lord would even have you read it to begin with. There's certain things I won't take in. See, people send me video clips and different things. There's certain things I just won't travel there. I just will not go there. Sometimes, for instance, we had bought tickets to see the movie Maleficent because I needed to see it, because this is a completely counter what we grew up with. This is like, evil good and good evil type thing. So we bought the tickets. We were at lunch, getting ready to eat lunch and then go see the movie. And the Holy Spirit spoke to me really plainly and said, "Don't go." And I looked at my wife and I said, "Well, we're not going to the movie." And we just, didn't go. And a friend of mine went, and she wrote the article. And that was it. For whatever reason, I didn't need to be there. And I've learned to mind the checks. And that's the thing. We need to mind the checks. When the Spirit of a living God tells us to move or not move, we need to heed those, because he knows more than we do.
Yeah, that's true. So you referenced that these are human hybrids. What's interesting, I had a doctor on the show. This is probably a year and a half ago when we were talking about something else. But he said that alien abductions, something that's common with alien abductions is that the people who are abducted are told by these aliens that they are working on alien human hybrids. What's the purpose of that if these aliens are powerful and they have beings? Why are they working on a hybrid?
Well, when we asked Chuck Missler this, who's an author, biblical commentator extraordinaire, and I cut my teeth on Chuck Missler years ago. I mean, I listened to his 6640 show on a regular basis. I mean, I would run to the radio at 4 o'clock here on the Pacific, in California, because it was just nourishment for my soul. I mean, that's what I owe a debt to Chuck, and I received the gold medallion from Quintanilla House a couple of years back, which was for me, it was a real prestigious award, and Chuck presented that to me. Thank you, Chuck. But Chuck states in our Watchers series, Satan is outnumbered 2-1. He's building an army. Satan is outnumbered 2-1. He's building an army. I'll tell you another story that came across my desk. This is from a pastor. So this pastor, Mike, is out walking, doing a prayer walk on a Saturday morning. And beautiful summer day. It was actually last summer, 2015. And he's doing this prayer walk, and in the distance, he sees a very tall female jogger run towards him. And she's got strikingly whitish, blondish hair. Okay, women look like that. And women can be tall, and women can be athletic.
Sure.
That looks exactly like this. But for some reason, he's on guard. He's not sure why. About 20 feet away, they make eye contact. And he's really on guard at this point. She's got strikingly pale blue eyes. But as she comes closer, the eyes change and go black. At this point, Pastor Mike is verbally doing spiritual warfare, saying, no weapon formed against me will prosper, no curses, hexes, or anything will come against me or my family. In the name of Yeshua, you foul and unclean thing. He's being very verbose, very vocal in her face. And as she comes running by, the eyes are black, okay? As she comes running by, she bares her teeth and growls at him.
What?
What are we to make of that? What are we to make of that?
That's just 7 flavors of nuts is what that is. So are you saying that maybe she was possessed, or maybe there are hybrids walking amongst us now?
There's a book by Dr. David Jacob, whom again I've interviewed. Both interviews, the first interview and then the update interview, is in Further Evidence, a groundbreaking book about the whole UFO phenomena. You want to study it? Get that book, because everybody that you want to know, Dr. Roger Lear, Dr. Jesse Marcel, Dr. David Jacob, Dr. Lynn Katai. There's 4 people with PhDs that we interviewed that talk about the UFO phenomena. It was just absolutely mind-boggling. Ricky Sorrell, who saw the huge mile-wide craft in Stevensville, Texas a number of years ago. So Further Evidence, so that's, we deal with all this in Further Evidence. But Dr. David Jacobs was on our Watchers series, again, Watchers 7. He's got a new book out, Walking Among Us. And he basically states that the hybrid program has reached completion, and they are now integrating these entities into human society. And we have had emails from people who claim to have encountered them. Certainly, Pastor Mike's encounter sounds like a hybrid entity to me. But I've got other emails from people. I don't get a lot of them, but there are a few. And when I get them, I try to vet the people and find out about the story. Well, what was it like? What did you see? So something's going on. And why should we be alarmed? Because, again, we go back to the Genesis 3 narrative, and what do we see? The seed of the serpent will be at enmity with the seed of the woman. And that's precisely what is happening in modernity.
How do we differentiate, though, between the legitimate claims that you're referencing and then some of the nutcase kind of claims? Because, there's all this stuff online, Larry King's a reptile, for example. Well, I've met Larry King, and he's not a reptile. And he might, be 40 years past 100 or something, but he's not a reptile. So how do you differentiate between crazies and possibly real?
Well, and this is the problem. Look, the supernatural is sloppy. You think about it. Sure. Yeah, Peter, you got to pay your taxes. Well, go down and throw your line into the water. And, when you catch the fish, you'll find 2 gold coins. Pay your taxes and mine. Yeah. Those are Jesus' words.
Great point.
That's crazy.
L.A., stay where you're at. One more segment left, folks. I know, it went by fast. We'll be back right after this.
I've been driving all night, my hands wet on the wheel.
You are listening to GCN.
Hey, Tom.
Visit GCNlive.com today.
Tom at GCN. Can I talk
Josh, somewhere in Wisconsin.
Actually, I am not in Wisconsin. Ha 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 ha.
Oh.
I'm actually in St. Louis, Missouri.
Oh. I thought you were up in Madison.
No, sir.
Wow.
I'm from Madison, and sometimes I do broadcast from there. But today I'm in the immortal words of Nelly. I'm from the Loot, and I'm proud. Run a mile. Never mind. I won't even start rapping. Can I talk to you? Can I talk to the guest?
Sure can. Here.
Hi, I'm Joan London.
You're free to speak.
Well, sir, I just want to thank you before we get into this last segment. Thank you for coming on, and I look forward already to the next time.
Yeah, it was a good romp. It went by really quick, didn't it?
Yeah, it did. Wow. And I can't wait to meet you in, what, 2 weeks?
Yeah. Not this weekend, but the following weekend.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah, it's going to be good.
So there's one more thing I want to ask you about, and that's Project Bluebeam, because that was on our top 10 list. And then you can end it however you want to end it.
Okay.
All right. Sounds good. Then I'll put you back in traffic for about 2.5 minutes, and we'll do it.
Sounds bueno.
Mom in the next 10 minutes to get your free ebook on financing senior care as well as free information on senior living communities in your area. Call 1-800-704-6182. That's 1-800-704-6182.
Hunters, anglers, campers, and survivalists. Get back to nature. Expand your horizons with the highest quality, most versatile, unique slingshots and sling bows on the market at slingbow.com. Slingbow products are compact and models start from just $17.98. They're perfect for your bug-out bag or storing in your vehicle. Give yourself and your loved ones the excitement and tradition of Slingbow, a new frontier in archery and truly modern twist on this primitive survival tool. Feel the thrill only at slingbow.com.
Think body armor is just for commandos? Think again. In a collapse
No body armor is for anybody who might get shot at.
Infidel body armor has created lightweight armor that repels AR-15 and AK-47.
Oh yeah.
And priced at around $500, it won't.
Hopefully that has not happened to you.
Weighs just 10 pounds. Light enough for your 7
No, I've never been shot at.
It's good. That's good.
I don't want to get shot at.
It's no bueno.
That's infidelbodyarmor.com.
Yeah.
Just won't quit.
So what do you think of the election?
Oh my gosh. Okay, so here's my real quick breakdown. If Ted Cruz wins, massive attack within 9 months afterwards, and then they're going to say it's because he's so strong they knew they needed to attack us. If Trump gets the nomination, the attack happens before November in order to thwart. If Hillary gets the nomination and wins the election and somehow doesn't end up in prison, 1, there's definitely a conspiracy there. 2, then we're going to see a massive rise of widespread terrorism, so bus attacks in 5 different cities. So that's my quick little rundown.
Wow, that's interesting. Yeah, I'm really, it's like I'm not endorsing Trump, but Trump's an outsider, at least for the moment, where Cruz is being paid for by big banking.
Oh, big time.
So, yeah, so it's, he talks a good game, but it's not really what's going on here. So it's, Hillary really belongs in jail. We all know that.
Yep.
And it's just, this whole thing is such a mess, but what the American people don't understand, well, they do understand, that's why they're voting for Trump. We've all had it. We're not going to believe the nonsense anymore.
Yeah, but what's
Jeb
interesting,
Bush spent 100...
real quickly, I got to get this in there, but what's interesting about this, LA, is that at the same time, the federal government is working really hard to get rid of sheriff's departments. The county I'm in right now and the one next door, along with about a dozen in Delaware, have all gotten rid of sheriffs. Hold on one second. All right, we are talking to L.A. Marzulli. Once again, the website, lamarzulli.net, LAMARZULLI.net. Books, articles, all that sort of stuff. Just go there and grab everything he's got because, man, this rabbit hole is deep. Now, I promised the audience, L.A., that before I let you go, I would ask about Project Bluebeam because everybody keeps asking about it. So what is it and why should we care?
Well, Bluebeam is very interesting. Allegedly, it's cooked up by the government, black ops, whatever, dark forces in the government. And what many people believe Bluebeam is able to do is create holographic images. So where you're looking up at the sky and you'll see a mile-wide craft, but there really isn't anything there. That's just Project Bluebeam working. We heard about this. We understand what it is. People talk about the false UFO invasion and all this stuff being created by Project Bluebeam. And I understand that and get that. And Bluebeam will certainly, play into the end time scenario on some level. However, the sightings that many pilots have seen, many witnesses, I mentioned Ricky Sorrell in Stephenville, Texas, mile-wide craft seen by multiple witnesses. Dr. Lynn Katai, Phoenix Lights, 1997, mile-wide craft over the city. The former governor, Fife Symington, 10 years later, on Larry King, stated that it was real. He was there, and he apologized to his former constituents for making light of it. That wasn't Bluebeam. So while they have the technology with Bluebeam to create holographic images, which can deceive a whole lot of people, on the other hand, you've got the real deal. You've got the Phoenix Lights, which weren't warthogs throwing down flares. That's not what we saw. Flares don't react that way. And we've got too many witnesses in Phoenix that came on the record, including former Governor Fife Symington, stating unequivocally what he saw was not of this world, direct quote. So the church, to sort of come full circle, needs to come to grips with what is happening and understand that these are not extraterrestrials. These are interdimensional beings. In fact, what's interesting is some of the founding fathers of modern-day ufology, J. Allen Hynek for one, Jacques Vallée for two, stated that in their opinion, and I'm not quoting directly here, sort of paraphrasing their statements, that the UFO phenomenon was more akin to demonic activity than extraterrestrial. And this is where they came up with the interdimensional hypothesis, which is exactly where I'm coming from. These are interdimensional beings. These are fallen angels masquerading as aliens. But there's a reason for it. And this is what people need to understand, that these craft may actually, in fact, be alive. And I realize, look, this is real strange stuff, and none of us have all the answers. There's a shot that we have that the late Dr. Roger Lear gave us in Watcher 7. That's an award-winning film, by the way, our Watcher 7, Physical Evidence. And we show what may be some of the clearest, best UFO footage ever seen. It's called the Kumburgaz UFO footage, taken in Kumburgaz, Turkey. And this UFO hovered for basically 5 hours. And they just shot it with a camera. And you can see the moon, and the videographer's panning in and out and in and out. You can see the moon and like what appears to be a star on the lower right, but it's not a star. And he zooms in, and the moon's gone, and then pretty soon there's this UFO craft, and the hatch is open, and there's two black-eyed beings standing there. I mean, with the big heads and the large wraparound black eyes. I mean, it's all there. And we show it to people, and you can hear a pin drop when I show that. You hear a pin drop, and I'll show that in Dallas because people need to see what the coming great deception is. When you see a craft like this, all bets are off. And if you don't know what you're looking at a priori, you will be deceived. Even the elect will be deceived if that were possible. You see a craft like that, your paradigm gets rocked. Your religion gets rocked. Everything gets rocked unless you understand, unless we understand what this is. It's demonic delusion. The craft is real and it's there, but it's not from Zeta Reticuli, as Gary Stearman and I talk about when I'm on Prophecy Watchers. Name dropping here, but Gary and I have had many off-camera discussions about all this stuff, and he believes like I do, but these are interdimensional entities, and they are masters of deception. It is wickedness in high places. We never even talked about, we don't really have time to talk about the whole abduction phenomenon where people are taken, and we discussed this in our Watchers 8. We removed an implant. We took an implant out. You watch the whole thing in Watchers 7 and Watchers 8. Okay, where we take it step by step, x-rays, CAT scans, Gauss meters, which show that this little implant, the size of a pencil lead at the end of a pencil, has a magnetic field of 8.0 milligauss on a Gauss meter. It's giving off a radio frequency of about 330 hertz. What the heck are we looking at here? What's going on? And then when we go to take it out in the operating theater, we can't find it. It's like the thing has been cloaked. All that is in Watchers 7 and Watchers 8. When I started talking about implants 15, 16 years ago, I was laughed at by the Christian community. Well, but they don't laugh anymore because here's hardcore physical evidence. And we removed it in an operating theater. And then we went to SEAL Lab and put the thing under a scanning electron microscope.
Wow.
I mean, it's hardcore physical evidence. Something is going on. The church needs to wake up, get its head out of the sand, and understand. Here's just something to think about. And I'll close with this because I know we're running out of time. When Moses shows up to Pharaoh, right, with Aaron, and they got the staff, they walk in, there's a full-blown occult paradigm in operation. Pharaoh's got his magicians, and they duplicate the first 3 plagues. Moses throws his staff down, the magicians go, we can do that. And they throw their staffs down, and they become serpents. When's the last time you saw anyone do that? When's the last time anyone that you know took a walking staff, threw that puppy down, and it became a serpent? And then other magicians did the same thing, but Moses' staff ate up the other serpents. I mean, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
This is the supernatural on steroids.
So
this is what's coming here.
Is there a general return to the supernatural? I mean, we're going to see more manifestations on both sides like those accounts. And then, of course, I'm going to have you back because you mentioned that the ship itself might be alive. And I flash back to an 80s movie called Flight of the Navigator where the ship essentially was alive.
Yeah. And some of these movies are based on, it's called soft disclosure.
Sure.
That's how they educate the people. And I realize that sounds like a conspiracy, LA. Well, why is it that every Friday Ancient Aliens is on there and they're promulgating the theory that we were seeded here by extraterrestrials? That's what they say, which is in direct contrast to the biblical prophetic narrative. The church needs to wake up and understand how far down the rabbit hole we already are and how we're not even part of the conversation. And yet 25 to 30% of the people in your church, guaranteed, have had an encounter of some sort. Guaranteed. Those are the numbers.
Absolutely wild. So, I mean, I guess until that next time that we see you, what's the next thing people should do? Is that where they should start, is the Watcher series?
Well, the Watcher series, any of our books, I mean, the Watcher series is great because people hold Watcher parties, and it wakes people up, and it gets people talking, and that's what they're designed to do. Any of the books, On the Trail of Nephilim 1 and 2, Further Evidence, Days of Chaos, Cosmic Chess Match, is a great place to start. It's like a primer. And actually, there are churches in the United States who buy 30 to 50 of them from us and then use that book on a Wednesday night Bible study.
Wow.
So, and I'm really proud of that. So that's really cool. But look, folks, something's going on, and we need to wake up and understand the tenuous, tumultuous, unprecedented times we are living in.
And read your Bible, the whole thing, cover to cover. Start doing what it actually says. Yeah, absolutely.
Put on the armor of God daily. Go to Ephesians 6. Not sure how to put on the armor of God? You're putting on Jesus. You're putting on Yeshua. Do it every day. Do it twice a day. You know, take every thought accountable and start to tell people about the Lord, because I truly believe we are in a period of time where the King has to return at some point. And that's the title of my, wrapping it up here for the Hear the Watchman Conference in Dallas.
Yep.
Days of Chaos and the Return of the King, because that's what's happening. We are in the midst of a regime change.
Yep, absolutely. L.A. Marzulli, thank you so much for joining us. I cannot wait to do this again. Man, the time just flew, didn't it? If you have got to watch the Hear the Watchman thing, and I understand, go to hearthewatchman.com, register for the live stream if for some reason you can't make it to the live event. If you can make it to the live event, buy your ticket, but put in their discount code JOSH. They'll knock off $50 for you, just to make it easier for that to happen. You got to get there, man. I'm telling you, there's so much to this world that you don't see when you're spending your time watching Dancing with the Stars. All right, that does it for today, my friends. Remember, no victim, no crime. Look into jury nullification. Today, tomorrow, and as always, may your path lead to heaven, and may freedom follow in your footsteps. Hey, thanks for watching. If you loved what I had to say, then subscribe right here. If you hated what I had to say, subscribe right here. It's fun being mad on social media, isn't it? Either way, I'd love to hear from you. Send me an email right there.